a little bit different but distinctive. That's the face of this little Suzuki S-Presso. The blocks, the 4 blocks across the front over here, was brought in on this model over here, but it is very distinctive, very, very Suzuki. The S-Presso comes in 3 model levels: GL, GL Plus, and S Edition. This is the middle one, the GL Plus. So it's lacking a few little trim items. That's all that differs between them to the S Edition, which has a more prominent skid plate at the front and back, and a few items like that, but really not the crux of what we're discussing over here right now. But it's a neat looking miniature crossover SUV. I think I'll call it that. And I call it the crossover SUV because as you come around, you see the cladding, of course, around the wheel arches, down along the bottom of the doors, etc. So it's got that crossover SUV effect. Tiny little 14-inch wheels with, when last did you see plastic wheel covers? But it's part of the car, it's part of this market segment, and it's certainly nothing to complain about. Also, a miniaturized version of the Vitara's, what they term the clamshell bonnet. You see that bonnet line and the way the bonnet opens. Just a slightly smaller version, again to give it the family likeness of Suzuki, to make you absolutely sure this is a Suzuki. Come along over here, you'll see, although there is a very prominent lock on the door, you do have the key with lock and unlock on the key. So you've got remote locking, can I call it, but a traditional key. But again, this is the market segment. Pretty wide C-pillar at the rear over here, but because it's such a little car, it doesn't really matter at all. And what is interesting, of course, and you need to take note of, is the driver's seat is set for myself. And just look at the legroom in the back here. That's pretty good. Let me term it that way. Very high. That's the stance of the vehicle. That's the design. That does make a difference. And interestingly, manual windows in the rear. Front electric, manual rear windows. But come on. Again, I'm saying at this price level, how can you actually complain about it? You come around to the rear and you'll see again nice neat tail lights that of course cut into the tailgate. Even a hint of a rear spoiler above the back window over here. Take note, no wiper on the rear window. It does have heating, but no wiper. But these are little things, and I don't think you can complain. You need the key to open up the rear hatch. You look over here. The back seat does fold, but in a single piece, not split. But again, how can you complain at this level? Lift up the boot board and have a look at actually a full-sized spare wheel in the back over here, which again I think is a nice touch and something I often comment on and that I would say is important to me. There's quite a high loading lip over here, so keep in mind that when you want to load things, you've got to lift them right over to get them into the boot. But it's a decent sized boot for a car like this, so again I would not complain about that at all. Another feature of GL Plus is you even get a rear view camera, a reverse camera built in on the screen, of course, that you have inside, which you'll see just now. So you do even get that with this car over here as well, and rear park distance control. Neat little features that you almost wouldn't expect at the price point. And I'm going to keep talking about the price point when it comes to this car because I think that is such an important factor. It's powered by the very, very familiar, from the Celerio range, Suzuki 1-litre 3-cylinder engine that kicks out 50 kilowatts, 90 newton meters of torque. On paper, those figures sound very, very puny, although they are really par for the market and the market segment. So always keep that in mind. But the car performs a little bit better than you'd expect from those numbers. You'll see that just now as well. Definitely got to be taken in context of market segment. And if you look at it this way, this is an interesting choice for the money that you're talking in today's world. On the road, it has that typical buzzy 3-cylinder engine sound. You really can't miss it. It also does have quite a bit of boom from the body, remembering this is a little box, and obviously you don't get that much sound insulation on a car like this, but you hear that? Let me open the window for a moment so you can really pick up the engine sound. But as I've said, the performance belies the engine size and the figures on paper. It certainly performs a lot more and a lot better than I would have expected. It's light, it's easy. There you hear the engine, of course. Remembering that on the freeway at 120, it is pushing it a little bit, but it handles the freeway very well. And it certainly gave us a good ride on a freeway and great economy. We did even better than the overall figure after a week's testing. So I managed to get to 4.4 litres per 100 on a pure freeway cruise the other day. But 5 litres per 100 overall is an exceptional figure for the test period, so I've got no complaints. Let's go uphill now, and you'll hear again the engine, and you can hear as you wind it up a little bit, it certainly does make itself heard. It is pretty vocal, but it's not a complaint in any way. It's simply telling you what a little car like this is about and what it's going to always be about. And I can't actually complain about that. It's just very much market segment related, I'm going to call it that. It goes nicely, it handles decently, you've got decent stopping power with ABS brakes, and you have got 2 airbags. So it's got everything, particularly your younger buyer would look for in this market segment. And as I said just now, when I showed you, there's your reverse camera. It may not be the greatest clarity, etc. on the camera, but it does the job, and that's all you can ever ask for. So why complain there? There are many contenders at much more money that don't offer a reverse camera. Jumping in behind the wheel, the S-Presso is different in many ways, but you've got to understand this is a small car, it's a compact car. So you better be prepared to be at pretty close quarters with your passenger, because remembering it's the tall and narrow stance. So there isn't exactly much elbow room between the 2 front seats. But that's what it is, that's what you've got to accept. Note the steering wheel with no buttons, but you do have the nice 7-inch touchscreen over here. But I'm going to complain a little bit and say to you, if you want to increase the volume on the radio, you've got to press those tiny little buttons there. And I did find them rather difficult to operate when you're on the move. But of course, what the screen has that really is important is Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. And that is what's really important to so many buyers these days, is having that. So just keep that in mind at this level of the market, to have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. You may have noticed when you look at the steering wheel, no instrumentation in front of me, because they've used the system, of course, reminds you of Mini, doesn't it? And even the rounded piece above it looks a bit like a Mini, with the instrumentation in the center over there. Big speedo, what you want, and then of course your trip meter, etc., your onboard computer over there. You'll see now we have done quite a good bit. There's 85 kilometers left in the little tank. Keep that in mind as well. 26,000 kilometers on the clock in this car. We've done 373 kilometers so far on this test, and we are averaging 20 kilometers per litre. Dead on 5 litres per 100. How's that? Not bad at all, I must tell you. I mentioned the 26,000 kilometers on the clock. Very unusual for a media test car to have a mileage like that. But besides one little rattle that I picked up, it certainly feels well put together, good condition, hasn't deteriorated, nothing like that. It still feels newish to me. Come down below the screen over here. There's the buttons for your electric front windows. Interesting placing. They're pretty useful, pretty easy to use once you know where they are and you are okay with that. Below that, yeah, air conditioning you've got as well. So you've got that. And below that, you've got a 12 volt and USB, etc. just below there. So you've got all the connectivity you possibly want in this little car, standard given to you. Little storage areas over here. I would have preferred a slightly better storage area for my phone, but I think I'm complaining more than I need to. Very light, easy to use 5-speed manual gearbox. Nothing much to say about it. It is exactly what it says, and it certainly works nicely. Easy to drive, light, etc. 2 airbags, ABS brakes. Because there was a lot of controversy shortly after the S-Presso was launched in South Africa when an Indian crash test gave it 0 stars. But that, as far as the research I've done, has shown that was a version that had no airbags or ABS brakes. So a bit unfair. The built in what they call the tombstone seats, so you've got the headrest built in, or what you'd expect, and decent space in the back seat. Definitely for 2. I don't think I try and get 3 in the back too often, and you'll notice just a lap belt for the middle passenger if you did try and squeeze a 3rd person in. No ISOFIX. But again, at this price level, at this price point, what can you expect? I think I'm going to phrase it that way. I keep mentioning the price point because that is what is so critical and so crucial with this car, because it is the 2nd cheapest car on the South African market right now in GL form. We're in GL Plus right now, which gives you the screen with Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. That's the main difference for an extra 5,000 Rand. 157,900 in the South African market right now is certainly as cheap as they get. Yep, I'm going to say it that way. But you're getting a lot with it. You're getting the nippy engine, 1 litre 3-cylinder, 50 kilowatts, 90 Newton meters. But remembering the fact that because the typically Suzuki lightweight construction, it feels much peppier than you'd expect from this little engine. And, of course, the fuel consumption, as I mentioned just now. So you've got all of that. You've got that screen. I keep coming back to it because that is so important to buyers in this market segment. And connectivity, so important to buyers in the segment these days. They want that. They have to have it. I'm going to term it that way. Again, a feature of the short, the narrow and tall stance is look at the headroom over here. With my hat on, plenty space. I had a 6'4" person sitting next to me yesterday. His knee was a little bit close to my gear shift, but he certainly had enough headroom, and that did make a difference, and that's what counts. This market segment is packed with contenders. But everybody knows Suzuki, knows their record. 2-year, 30,000 kilometer service plan, 5-year, 200,000 kilometer warranty, standard on these cars. And the S-Presso does have that little, can I call it, funky look to it. It's taking the fact that an A-segment hatchback is a little box on wheels. Suzuki have done something just to give this one a little bit of character, a little bit of personality. And I think that stands out quite clearly. And it's quite fun to drive, just added to it, although that's not what you necessarily would expect in this market segment. So overall, if you're looking for a budget A-segment hatchback, you ignore this at your own peril. Check it out with all the competition before you make any decisions. For Matters, I'm Eleanor. I'll see you next time.